The third year was different in the way that weather was different when the season had changed. Not a single moment of shift, but a quality distributed through everything, so that standing in the Academy's courtyard on the first morning of September year 10, Kael understood that the difference was not in any one thing, but in the aggregate of all of them. The Crown Prince faction students arrived differently. Not in louder groups, the volume was not what had changed, but with a particular organization of people who had spent the summer confirming a position rather than holding one. In the second year, the faction had the quality of established power that assumed its own permanence. In the third year, it had the quality of a position being actively consolidated, which was a different thing. Consolidation was what you did when you understood that permanence required effort. The Old Blood Coalition students arrived differently too. He identified this on the second day of the first week, in the library's second-floor reading room, where Elvin Heldress, House Heldress, Old Blood, a quiet student who had spent 2 years of social effort producing a carefully maintained posture of casual neutrality, sat across from Morintal and Adries Vance in a configuration that had the unmistakable quality of 3 people who had arranged to be in the same place. Not the shared situational awareness that had produced synchronized responses in the second year. An arrangement. Someone had written to someone over the summer. The Old Blood Coalition had understood that a mechanism built on independent tracking would fail when the situation moved faster than tracking could follow, and had corrected for it. Kael noted this as he returned his volumes to the reference section, walking past the table without acknowledgement. He noted it with a specific quality he reserved for data points that changed the baseline: significant, expected, filed. The neutral houses, or what remained of them. He had tracked 7 in his second-year map. He spent the first 2 weeks of September doing his first-week recalibration and confirmed. 2 more had committed during the summer, both to the Crown Prince faction, which was the material interest pattern he'd predicted. 1. House Ferreth, whose primary land concern sat in the succession question's agricultural policy implications, had moved to the Old Blood Coalition, which surprised him mildly and updated his model in a way that required an afternoon's recalibration. For remaining. For genuinely uncommitted houses in a succession crisis that was no longer theoretical. The political temperature had risen past the point where uncertainty was a sustainable position. He updated the faction map on the 8th day of September and wrote in the cipher notebook, in the compressed notation, third year opening, Crown Prince faction 43, 3, Old Blood Coalition 28, 4, Neutral 29, -7. Quality shift, Crown Prince faction consolidating rather than expanding, Old Blood Coalition structurally improved, formal coordination replacing situational awareness mechanism. For neutral houses remaining, House Ferreth moved to Old Blood Coalition, unexpected, revised material interest model to account for agricultural policy weighting. Neutral houses commitment timing, likely triggered by King's first major public health event. Flag, that event has not yet occurred. The King. He had 2 pieces of intelligence from the summer. The first, from Torrens Network, the King had attended the Spring Council in month 4 of year 10, presided for 1 hour, and had not attended again. The second, from Carrion's quarterly review, the Succession Council was now meeting 4 times weekly, which was the organizational equivalent of the council having shifted from monitoring a situation to managing it. The combination told him what no official announcement had confirmed: the King's condition was no longer improving. Whatever treatment or management had sustained the prior year's minimal public function had reached its limit. The court was managing the announcement. The announcement would come when it became impossible to avoid. The succession crisis would become explicit when the King's condition became undeniable. He estimated 6 months, possibly fewer. 6 months before explicit. Implicit had been the condition of the Academy for 2 years. He was now working in explicit conditions, with a harder deadline than he had previously operated under, and a succession question that had moved from theoretical to urgent. The third year required a different posture than the first 2. He had been thinking about what the different posture required for the length of the summer. He had run Gareth's full protocol for 60 days after the second academy year ended, which had the quality that full capability work always had after a period of partial suppression, the specific pleasure of operating without a fractional ceiling, the spatial sense at full frontier range, the core unrestricted. He had also spent 40 days of the summer on correspondence, Torrens Network, Carrion's Quarterly, Bar Aldrin's analysis of succession council composition. He had spent 10 days reading. He had spent 3 days sitting on the Barony's eastern ridge, watching the Seal Gap coordinates direction and understanding that the Order was still out there, still building its picture of the frontier, and that his anonymous intelligence report to the Capital Military Branch had produced exactly the response he had predicted: eventual processing, eventual filing, no immediate action. The third year's posture, visible in more places, faster to act, less conservative about drawing from established resources. The first 2 years had been foundation. The foundation was built. Now it needed to bear weight. He attended the first week's lectures with the same calibrated presence he had maintained for 2 years, 42nd percentile physical, upper quarter academic. The general track scholarship student whose tournament run 3 years ago remained the most notable thing about him in the Academy's social memory. He answered questions at the level of accurate but not memorable. He sat in the same study Kael in the library at the same evening hours. He ran the pre-dawn sessions at the same time, in the same general use arena, with the same care for unobserved practice. But he also began attending the House Correspondence Board readings in the main hall, which he had previously skipped as a general track student with no house news to track. The pretext was easy. His father was a baron, however minor. Frontier barony news occasionally appeared in the correspondence bulletins. No one would find the attendance odd. What it gave him was access to the capital news cycle in near real time, 2 to 3 days ahead of the general student body's awareness. And he had a new correspondent, Lyra Stormwind, Northern Thornwald, House Stormwind Secondary Estate, Mondays. He had written once at the start of summer a brief letter, noting the address received, confirming he was at the barony. She had written back, longer than expected, accurate observations about the succession situation from the Thornwald Confederation's perspective, and a detailed account of an intermediate lightning technique assessment she had taken in the first week of July with results she described as sufficient, which means I need to fix 3 things before next year. He had replied to the technical section specifically. The correspondence had continued at irregular intervals through the summer and had the quality of something that continued because the continuation was useful, which was its own kind of answer about what it was. He was 16. He had been at this for 8 years. The world was accelerating around him, which was what worlds did when the stable conditions that had held them in place began to change. He did not find this alarming. He found it specific. Specific was workable. He went to dinner on the 9th day and sat with Renner and Sova and Lorne and Cass, who were arguing about the third-year assessment requirements in the standard way they argued about requirements, which was precisely, with all relevant data. And with the characteristic Lorne approach of providing the definitive information at the moment the argument had run itself to a stopping point. Kael ate his bread and tracked the dining hall's spatial distribution for the week's running tally and listened to the argument and noted that what had not changed in the third year, with the world accelerating and the succession crisis becoming explicit, was this: the specific quality of a table where people genuinely liked each other and talked about things that mattered to them in a room that was well lit and served reasonable soup. He intended to protect this. He did not have a plan for protecting it. He noted the intention for future reference and ate his bread. Outside the dining hall's tall windows, the September evening had the quality of September at the Academy's northern grounds, the specific light of early autumn that was different from summer not in temperature but in color, the quality of a world that had started to consider the season that came after what it currently was. The lamp in the courtyard's far corner had been replaced over the summer. The new lamp was slightly brighter than its predecessor, which changed the sightline calculation at the 40-meter mark. He updated the map in his working memory for this specific difference and returned to the soup, and the third year continued. The announcement appeared in the third week of October on the House Correspondence Board's southern panel, below the seasonal trade notifications and above the administrative correspondence log, a Royal Council formal notice of elevation, dated the 12th day of the 10th month of year 10, sealed with the Council's certification sigil and the Crown Prince's administrative authority signature. House Crestfall, by the authority of the Royal Council and the Crown Prince's administrative mandate, is hereby elevated to full duchy status, effective the date of this notice. The seat of Duchy Crestfall is established at Crestfall Hall in the Western Plains, with ducal authority extending over the following administrative territories. The list that followed was long. He read it twice, standing at the board in the main hall's morning traffic, with approximately 20 other students who had varying degrees of investment in the news. He read it with the specific attention of someone who had been anticipating this category of announcement for 2 years and needed to understand the precise scope of what it described. House Crestfall had been one of the kingdom's largest landholder families for 3 generations. Their base was in the Western Plains, good agricultural land, strong local administrative presence, the kind of multi-generational position that didn't require elevated status to exercise considerable influence. The elevation to full duchy was not a surprise in its occurrence. It was a surprise in its scope. The ducal authority extended over significant frontier territory. He read the territorial list for the second time, slowly, tracking the geographic logic of the administrative boundaries. The duchy's frontier holdings, the land grants the Crown Prince's faction had extended to Crestfall over the past 3 years, which he had noted in the capital intelligence summaries and filed as expansion rather than consolidation, were now organized under formal ducal jurisdiction. Tax authority. Administrative oversight. Land grant approval power for new settlement within the defined boundaries. The nearest administrative boundary to Ashford Barony, 12 miles. The barony's nearest neighbors, the 3 farming settlements to the northeast, the timber cooperative at Bell Ridge, and the small mining operation at Greystone that had existed in an informal arrangement with the barony for as long as his grandfather's records showed, were now under Duchy Crestfall's administrative oversight. He stepped back from the board and let a second-year student take his place. He went to his study Kael in the library and sat for 20 minutes with a book he was not reading. Duke Harvin Crestfall was 42 years old. He had been a problem at the edges of the barony's situation since Kael was 8, present in the mineral registry pressure, present in the loan documentation, present in the Crestfall challenge to the barony's legal position in the Eastern Land Survey. The pressure had never been direct. It had always operated through institutional channels, a petition filed here, a timing delay imposed there, the specific quality of a large house using the weight of its administrative presence rather than any particular dramatic act. Direct action was expensive and risky. Institutional pressure was patient and cheap. The duchy changed the institutional calculus. A landholder family pressuring a frontier barony through administrative channels was a common and manageable situation. The kingdom had 50 such situations in any given year. A duke pressuring a frontier barony under his administrative jurisdiction was a categorically different thing. The ducal authority converted what had been informal pressure into formal power, and formal power had different options. He understood this and sat with it and understood what it meant for the iron deposit. The Kingdom Mineral Registry had formally recognized the Ashford deposit as a registered mineral holding in year 8. The registration had made informal seizure significantly harder. But the registration's protection was against horizontal seizure, an equal or lesser entity claiming the deposit. A ducal authority, administering the territory in which the deposit sat, had a different relationship to it. Not seizure. Administrative oversight. Tax authority on mineral extraction. Land use approval requirements. These were the instruments of the duchy, and they were sufficient to make the deposit economically unviable if applied systematically. Or, they were sufficient leverage to force a sale. He sat in the study Kael for 20 minutes. Then he took out the cipher notebook and wrote the analysis in compressed form, the ducal authority scope, the territorial boundaries relative to Ashford. the specific administrative instruments now available to Crestfall that had not been available before the elevation, and at the bottom, execution window estimate, 30 to 90 days post-elevation. Instrument, loan documentation call-in under ducal authority is the fastest available channel. Registration protection does not cover this instrument. He closed the notebook. The Crown Prince's faction had made its first major visible move. The move served two purposes simultaneously. It rewarded a loyal noble family with elevated status, which was the public purpose. And it created a mechanism for applying formal administrative pressure to the frontier regions where the Crown Prince's succession would face its most sustained independent resistance, which was the operational purpose. The two purposes were not in conflict. They were the same purpose, expressed in different registers. He had been expecting this category of move. He had not known exactly when, exactly which family, exactly what scope. Now he knew all three, and knowing all three allowed him to move from anticipation to response. What he needed, time. Time was what the elevation was designed to remove. The duchy had been established on the 12th of October. The administrative instruments available to the Duke could be deployed at any point after that date. The loan documentation was the fastest instrument. A ducal authority could call in outstanding loans with 60-day notice. The Ashford Barony had outstanding loans. He had known this for 8 years and had reduced the principal twice, but the frontier economic reality meant the barony was not free of debt service. He went to dinner. He ate with appropriate regularity. He attended the evening practicum. He ran the pre-dawn session at the 6th hour. He wrote a letter to Aldrich that evening, not a warning, because the letter would arrive after events had already moved, but a briefing, what the duchy elevation meant for the barony's legal position, what Aldrich should expect from the administrative channels, and 3 specific instructions regarding the documentation Kael needed him to locate in the barony's records office. Ledger references. The original loan contracts. The Frontier Barony Treaty Provisions Appendix, which was a secondary document attached to the kingdom's original frontier charter, and which he had read once, carefully, at age 12. And remembered with the specific quality of things that are read carefully, because they will be needed. He sealed the letter and placed it in the morning's outgoing correspondence. Then he waited. The waiting was not passive. He spent the 2 weeks after the elevation running every available analysis of the Duke's likely deployment timeline, cross-referencing against the specific instruments available and the administrative speed typical of ducal offices executing formal notice procedures. He developed 3 timing scenarios: early, within 30 days, standard, 30 to 60 days, late, 60+ days, if the Duke was confident enough to let the threat develop before acting. And prepared for the early scenario because that was the only one that left insufficient time if he didn't begin moving. He moved. Quietly, precisely, through the channels available to him. He wrote to Torrens' merchant ring address with a request encrypted in their commercial cipher. He reviewed his Crestfall intelligence file, the material from the CH-31 investigation, updated by Carrion's subsequent reports, and assessed what was usable. And he waited for his father's letter. It arrived 19 days after the elevation notice. He recognized the handwriting on the envelope from across the correspondence room. He collected it without visible change in his expression, walked to the study Kael, and read it. He had been correct about the instrument. He had underestimated the timing. The Duke had moved in 22 days, not 30. He held the letter for a moment. Then he put it in the cipher box, took out his work, and began. The letter was in Aldrich's handwriting. That was the first thing he noted, not because it was unexpected, but because the handwriting was different from the usual letters. The usual letters had the particular quality of someone who thought about what to say and then said it with the care of a man who believed words were worth the effort of getting right. This letter had the quality of someone who had written quickly and rewritten and written again, and this was the version that had gone into the envelope. Kael. The Duke's administrative agent arrived 3 days ago. I have attached the formal notice. The loan is called in, full principal and accrued interest, in 60 days from the date of service. I attach the document. The date is the 3rd of this month. The sum is listed at the bottom. I won't repeat it in this letter because writing it twice would be the same as looking at it twice, and I have already looked at it more times than is useful. The Drainage Project Loan. the vassal credit extension, the 2 prior debt instruments from before the barony's improvement. All of them together. The agent cited ducal authority over outstanding financial instruments in the administrative territory, which my understanding is the formal basis and the legal basis, based on the frontier charter provisions. You will know better than I do whether this is correct. I will not sell the eastern land. I am telling you this before you begin whatever you are going to begin, so you understand that there is a floor below which this does not go. The tenants who farm the eastern range are in those houses because we kept the barony in a condition worth farming. The iron deposit is Ashford land. I will not sell it. I am also telling you that the sum is large and the time is short and I do not have a solution. Bast has looked at the numbers twice and said the same thing. Gareth has not looked at the numbers because I have not shown them to him, but I suspect he would say the same. I trust you. I don't say that in every letter because I don't think it needs to be said in every letter. I'm saying it in this one because you should know it before you read the attached notice. Father. He read the letter once. Then he set it on the desk in front of him and did not move. He sat in the study Kael in the Academy's library in the 2nd week of November, in the specific quality of a library afternoon when the reading room had 20 people in it and the particular noise of quiet, the turning of pages, the occasional scratch of a pen, someone's chair shifting against the stone floor, was the ambient environment, and he did not move. The attached formal notice was in the duchy's administrative format, heavy paper, the Crestfall crest in orange and black, the ducal seal, the precise legal language of an instrument being deployed by an authority that had the standing to deploy it. He had read enough of this category of document to parse it in 90 seconds. The instrument was correctly executed. The legal basis was correctly cited. The sum was the sum his father had not repeated in the letter. He could see from the formatting that the document was correct. He could see from the legal basis citation that the Duke's legal team had found the right provision, the one that didn't require a court process before deployment under ducal authority. The 60-day window was not a negotiating position. It was the legal instrument's specified terms. He sat for an hour. He was not paralyzed. He was doing something during that hour, in the way that a mind doing its most concentrated work sometimes produces a quality of physical stillness that an outside observer might mistake for an action. He was holding the situation in full, the loan sum, the 60-day window, the legal basis, the Duke's strategic position, the barony's actual assets, the available channels, the timeline constraints, the interdependencies between the different available responses, and he was letting the full picture exist at once, rather than narrowing to any one piece of it before the whole was clear. His father had said, "I will not sell the eastern land." This was not a position to work around. This was the floor of the problem, stated plainly. He agreed with the floor and had no intention of arguing with it. The question was, what happened above the floor? The answer was everything he was going to do in the next 60 days from his academy study Kael through correspondence channels and established network assets and the specific resources he had been building for 8 years. And the answer was already taking shape in the hour of stillness, and by the time the hour was done he knew approximately what the shape was and had moved from holding the full picture to selecting the first action. He took out the cipher notebook. He wrote the situation in its accurate form. Loan sum, 60-day countdown from the date of service. He checked the attached notice. The service date was the 3rd of November. 60 days placed the deadline at the 3rd of January. The ducal authority's available instruments, the barony's current assets and their liquidity, the income the iron deposit was currently generating, deliberately constrained full production would have attracted attention, and at the bottom, a single line, the eastern land is not available. Find another path. Below that, he began the counter. He wrote 7 headings. The first was the legal challenge. The Frontier Barony Treaty Provisions Appendix, the document he had read at age 12 and had instructed his father to locate in the records office, contained historical language establishing that loan instruments secured against Frontier Barony assets during the pre-duchy period of a landholder's authority were governed by the terms of the original instrument's jurisdiction, not the subsequently elevated authority's ducal powers. The provision existed because the previous generation of frontier barons had insisted on it, understanding that without it, Elevation of any neighboring family would allow retroactive reclaiming of frontier debt instruments. The provision was old enough that the Duke's legal team might have missed it. It was specific enough that, deployed correctly, it would require a court process before the 60-day instrument could be legally executed. A court process took time. Time was what he needed. The second was the credit instrument. Torin. He had already sent the preliminary inquiry in the days after the elevation notice. Torin would arrange credit. The question was the terms and the collateral, and those questions were answerable. If the legal challenge failed or was insufficient, he needed a second option that didn't require winning the legal argument. He wrote the remaining 5 headings with the specific precision of someone who understood that a plan with 7 steps was not a plan you executed sequentially, but a set of conditions you created simultaneously, so that when the opposition addressed one, the others were already in motion. He closed the notebook. He thought about his father's letter for a moment, the handwriting, the line that said, "I trust you," the specific way that line had been placed after the statement that there was no solution rather than before it, which was the way Aldrich communicated things he couldn't say directly. He had received his father's trust. He had been receiving it for 8 years. It had never come with conditions and had never required accounting. He picked up the cipher notebook again and wrote one more line in the unenciphered section. "I am not going to lose the barony." He said this without drama, the way he said most things he was certain of, which was in writing that no one would read, in the specific quiet of a statement that needed to be made precisely once, so that everything after it could proceed from a known position. He put the notebook away and took out paper and began drafting the first correspondence. Outside the library's windows, the November afternoon was the particular quality of November in the Academy's northern grounds. The season fully committed now, the bare branch quality of the trees in the courtyard. The light that came from a lower angle and reached fewer places than it had 2 months ago. He had been at this institution for 3 years, counting the current one. He had an intelligence file, an active network, a legal provision his opponent had likely not checked, and 60 days. He had worked with less. The fury was useful. He had recognized this at 14, in a drainage channel with a demon scout, when the understanding of the order's full scale had arrived with a weight that he had no intention of putting down, and had recognized that the correct response to the weight was not to set it down but to convert it. Fury at the correct scale produced clarity. Fury at the incorrect scale produced errors. The question was always which scale. The barony situation was personal in a way that the order's strategic picture was not. The order was a systemic threat. Duke Crestfall had sent an agent to his father's door. He had read his father's letter and the line, "I trust you," and understood that the trust was absolute and that the situation produced in him a quality of anger that was very specific and very clean. He noted the anger's specificity, and then he used it. The counter-strategy had 7 steps. He had been constructing it since the elevation notice and had most of the structure by the time the letter arrived. The letter confirmed the instrument and the timeline and allowed him to finalize the sequencing. He spent 2 days, after the first hour of stillness, refining the 7 steps from outline to plan. He wrote the plan in the cipher notebook in the compressed form he used for active operations, each step stated as a single action, followed by its resource requirement, timeline, and dependency map. Step 1. The legal challenge. The Frontier Barony Treaty Provisions Appendix, Section 7, Clause 12, the provision governing jurisdiction over loan instruments issued prior to Noble House elevation. He had instructed Aldrich to locate the document in the Barony's records office. Aldrich had confirmed its presence in the return letter. The provision's language was specific. Instruments entered into under a landholder's pre-duchy authority were governed by the terms of the original instruments establishing jurisdiction, which for the Crestfall loans meant the standard Frontier Barony lending framework, not ducal authority. The Duke's legal basis cited the general ducal authority instrument. The specific provision he was filing against would require the court to determine whether the provision superseded the general instrument. Determining this would take time. The court calendar for instrument disputes in the capital ran 4 to 6 weeks from filing to hearing. If the hearing produced a determination in his favor, the instrument was invalid. If it produced a determination against, he would know precisely 4 to 6 weeks before the 3 of January deadline, which gave him time to deploy the remaining steps. Filing. His father would file through the Frontier Barony Court representative channel. Kael had already drafted the filing document and was completing it for Aldrich's signature. Timeline to Aldrich. 3 days via express correspondence. Filing. The following day. Hearing. 4 to 6 weeks from filing. Step 2. The credit instrument. Torrin. He had sent the preliminary inquiry 5 days before the letter arrived and was waiting for Torrin's response, which would include proposed terms and collateral requirements. Torrin's network had access to credit instruments through the Merchant Guild's Frontier Development Channel, legitimate lending that operated under different terms than standard capital banking, with collateral arrangements that could accommodate mineral registry assets rather than requiring liquidation. Requirement. Torrin's return letter, expected within the week. Terms assessment. He had modeled the likely cost against the Barony's medium-term iron deposit income and assessed the debt service as sustainable at current production levels, which were deliberately suppressed. If production increased to the level the deposit survey indicated was possible, the service was trivially sustainable within 3 years. The credit instrument was expensive but functional. It was the option if everything else failed. Step 3. The intelligence file. He had been holding Crestfall intelligence since the CH-31 work, a document from that first capital summer recording the Crestfall family's illegal seizure of frontier land from House Aldrich, a minor holding that had been unable to defend its position through the standard channels. The documentation was complete. Property survey discrepancy, false administrative filing, the specific agent who had executed the seizure. He had held this for 4 years. He had added to it through Carrion's reports 2 additional instances of administrative irregularity in the years since, neither as clear-cut but both consistent with the pattern. The file was leverage. It was not being deployed in this step. Step 3 was completing the file and assessing the deployment window, which would be decided after steps 1 and 2 had produced their results. If the legal challenge succeeded and the credit covered the loan as a backup, the file remained in reserve. If the legal challenge failed and the credit was insufficient, the file became relevant through a different mechanism, the Royal Council review process, in which documented ducal misconduct could trigger an administrative review of the duchy's authority exercise, potentially including the loan instrument. Step 4. The mine's classification. The Kingdom Mineral Registry had registered the Ashford deposit. Registration protected against seizure. What it had not produced yet, because Kael had not needed it before now, was a formal classification by the Royal Assay Office. A registered deposit was not the same as a classified deposit. A classified deposit, specifically, a deposit classified as a strategic resource, required Crown-level oversight for any transfer of ownership. If the iron deposit was classified as a strategic resource before the 3 of January deadline, any forced sale required capital-level approval, which added a layer of process that the Duke's 60-day instrument could not easily bypass. Arranging an assay office assessment required a formal application from the registered holder, Aldrich, in this case, through the Kingdom Mineral Registry's classification process. The application required a supporting technical survey, which the Barony had already commissioned through Bast's autumn survey work. He was writing the formal application language for Aldrich to sign and file simultaneously with the legal challenge. Step 5. The Alliance. The Eastern Frontier Compact. 2 neighboring baronies, House Kendrell and House Marson, had been in loose informal alignment with Ashford since the second year of Kael's improvements. He had built these relationships through Aldrich's correspondence and Torrin's trade facilitation, not through direct contact. The relationship was real. It had not been formalized because formalization would have made it more visible to the exact kind of attention he was now receiving. The Duke's elevation and the loan call-in were not exclusive to Ashford. The duchy's administrative territory covered Kendrell and Marson's land boundaries as well, which meant they were in the same exposed position, subject to the same ducal authority instruments. He was drafting a proposal through Torrin's merchant network. Torrin had facilitated the original informal alignment for a formal compact arrangement. 3 baronies presenting a unified legal challenge to the instrument's ducal jurisdiction basis, sharing legal costs and creating a combined filing weight that would carry more institutional force than a single barony's challenge. The compact would appear, publicly, to be Torrens' initiative, a merchant guild facilitating frontier barony coordination on a trade and development matter. This was not inaccurate. It was the framing that would be visible. Step 6. The evidence release. The Crestfall intelligence file's primary document, the House Aldwick land seizure, would be released to a capital broadsheet journalist at the moment of maximum impact, when the Crestfall legal case against the Compact's challenge was under active review. At that moment, public attention to the Duke's conduct would produce competing institutional demands on his administrative attention, and the capital's political audience would receive the information in the context of an ongoing dispute rather than as an isolated allegation. The journalist, Torrens' network had a legitimate connection, through the document services sector, to a broadsheet publisher whose standard policy was to verify independently before printing. The verification process would take 2 to 3 weeks from submission to publication. He would submit the package with sufficient lead time to target the review period. Step 7. The reserve. The succession connection. The Duke's elevation was a Crown Prince faction move. The loan instrument was being executed under a duchy that existed as a result of Crown Prince faction political decisions. If the court process produced adverse outcomes at every other step, the succession framing provided a final channel. The Royal Council's nomination process for the succession decision included a public legitimacy review of significant recent ducal authority actions. A duke who had been publicly documented as having engaged in illegal land seizures was a liability to the faction that elevated him. This step required the succession to be closer to explicit than it currently was. He would hold it until the situation required it. He closed the notebook. He was 16 years old, sitting in a library study Kael at a prestigious academy 300 miles from his father's house, and he had just planned a 5-front simultaneous legal, financial, political, and intelligence operation that needed to produce results in 60 days, or the barony would be forced to sell land his father's tenants depended on. The situation was what it was. He had noted it, evaluated it, and determined that it was solvable. The fury had produced the clarity. The clarity had produced the plan. The plan would produce the result. He picked up his pen and began drafting the legal challenge filing. 5 channels. Each one required a different instrument and a different timing, and the work was not sequential but simultaneous, which was the hardest quality of it. Not any individual channel's complexity, but the management of all 5 moving at the same time without any of them producing information that would allow someone watching closely to map the coordination. The coordination existed. What could not exist was the evidence of it. He ran the channels from his academy study Kael, from the Court Street correspondence infrastructure he had built over 3 years, and from a series of letters that he wrote and dispatched through the regular student outgoing mail, the Guild Node correspondence system, and a single direct courier hired through Torrens' network for the one communication that required faster travel than the standard post. Channel 1 had been launched the day after the letter arrived. The legal challenge filing was drafted in the Cipher Notebooks work section, transferred to clean paper in the formal register of Frontier Barony court filings, and sent via express correspondence to Aldrich with full instructions. The filing required Aldrich's signature as the registered holder of the affected loan instruments. It required the specific citation from the Frontier Barony Treaty Provisions Appendix, which Kael had transcribed word for word. And it required a cover letter for the Frontier Court representative, which explained the basis and requested expedited handling on the grounds that the 60-day instrument created urgent prejudice to the applicant's legal interests. He received confirmation from Aldrich 7 days later, filed. The Frontier Court representative had accepted the expedited handling request. Hearing, scheduled for the second week of December. The 3 of January deadline was 3 weeks after the scheduled hearing. If the hearing went well, the instrument was delayed. If it went badly, he had 3 weeks to deploy the remaining channels. 3 weeks was tight. He had built the plan to win the legal argument or to survive losing it, so he ran both tracks. Channel 2 was Torin. Torin's return letter had arrived the same week as Aldrich's confirmation. The terms were what he had modeled: a Merchant Guild Frontier Development Credit Instrument, collateral structured against the iron deposit's registered mineral survey value at 40 of assessed worth. Debt service arranged at current deposit income levels with a graduated scale if production increased. The interest rate was Torin's standard frontier rate, not punitive, not charitable. Commercial. The letter included a sentence at the bottom that Kael read twice. I've arranged the terms on the assumption that we're trying to protect something worth protecting, which means I'm not going to make you pay for that assumption. Consider the first 3 months' interest a consultation fee on my end for whatever is coming next, because I suspect this is not the last I'll hear of this business. He had noted that Torin's intelligence instincts remained sound and had written back, your instinct is correct. Stand by for consultation. The credit instrument was in place. The collateral documentation required Aldrich's signature on the registry transfer, which he had arranged in the same correspondence package as the legal filing. Channel 2 was ready to deploy at his instruction. He did not instruct it yet. The legal challenge was the first option, and the credit was the second. Channel 3 was the intelligence file. He completed the Crestfall file on a Saturday evening in the second week of November, in the specific quality of the residential tower at the late hour when the floor was quiet. The file had 3 primary documents and 2 supporting cross-references. He reviewed each document for the second time to confirm what he had and what it demonstrated. The primary document, House Aldrich Land Seizure, Year 5. Survey discrepancy between the Crestfall family's registered boundary claim and the pre-existing Aldrich holding. False administrative filings citing a survey document that had been altered. Kael had identified the alteration at age 12 through a comparison of 2 separate survey reference copies held in different archival locations. The original capital filing versus the local registration copy, identical in almost every measure except a single acreage notation on the northwest parcel. The discrepancy was either an administrative error of remarkable specificity or the product of someone who had altered one document and missed a cross-reference. He assessed the latter. The 2 supporting cross-references, subsequent Crestfall administrative filings in years 7 and 8 that showed consistent behavior, not as clear-cut as the Aldrich seizure, but demonstrating a pattern. The third document was not a seizure, but a tax assessment discrepancy. Crestfall reporting practices on the Western Plains agricultural holdings consistently understated yield in a way that was statistically consistent with deliberate misrepresentation rather than estimation variance. The file was not perfect. A determined legal team could challenge the survey discrepancy interpretation. But as the basis for a public report, verified independently by a journalist with access to the registry documents he was providing, it was sufficient to produce a story that the capital broadsheet market would print and the Duke would spend considerable energy addressing. He wrote the journalist contact instructions in the cipher notebook, submission through Torin's document services contact in the merchant ring, who would route the package to the broadsheet publisher's senior correspondent under an anonymous source designation. He set the submission timing, to be dispatched when he received confirmation that the compact filing had been accepted, Channel 5, which would place the story's publication window within the court's review period for the compact's legal challenge. Sequencing. Legal challenge hearing first, then compact filing, then journalist submission, then review period, then publication. Channel 4 was the mine's classification. The formal application to the Royal Assay Office for Strategic Resource Classification required the registered holder's petition, Aldrich's signature, the supporting technical survey, the Basque-commissioned autumn survey, which was already complete, and a statement of public strategic interest explaining why the deposit warranted Crown-level oversight for ownership transfer. He drafted the statement of public strategic interest himself, 3 paragraphs of precise technical language describing the deposit scale, its position as the largest underdeveloped iron source in the eastern frontier region, and the frontier military implications of concentrated iron production capacity at a single private holding. The technical language was accurate. The framing was selected for maximum resonance with the Assay Office's mandate, which included frontier military readiness as an explicit classification criterion. He sent the petition package with Aldrich's signed petition forms and the technical survey extract. He estimated assay office processing time 3 to 5 weeks. If the classification was granted before the 3 of January deadline, the forced sale required capital-level approval. If it arrived after, it was still valuable for any subsequent legal dispute, but it didn't help the current instrument. He noted this as a channel where the timing was not fully in his control. He proceeded anyway. Every available option running simultaneously meant that the failure of any single channel produced a result that the other channels were already positioned to address. Channel 5 was the compact. He wrote to Torren with the proposal, a formal memorandum of mutual legal support between 3 frontier baronies, Ashford, Kendrell, and Marsin, for the purpose of presenting a unified challenge to the ducal authority instrument's jurisdictional basis. The proposal was structured as a standard Merchant Guild Frontier Development Coordination Agreement, which was a real document type that Torren's network facilitated regularly. The form was legitimate. The purpose was legitimate. The legal challenge was legitimate. He was not hiding the fact of the coordination. He was routing it through the channel that made it appear to originate from commercial coordination rather than from a 15-16. Now he was 16-year-old student at the Royal Academy managing a multi-front crisis through correspondence from 300 miles away. Torren's response: he had reached both families. Kendrell had agreed immediately. Their eastern land holdings were directly adjacent to the duchy's new administrative territory, and they had received their own administrative notice, less extreme than Ashford's but suggestive. Marsin had required 2 days' consideration, and had agreed with the condition that the compact's public framing emphasized the trade development aspect rather than the legal resistance aspect. He had accepted this condition. The framing did not affect the filing's legal substance. The compact filing, submitted to the Frontier Court in the second week of November, with Torren's facilitation and Aldrich's signature alongside the Kendrell and Marsin barons. 3 baronies, 1 unified legal challenge, 1 filing. The Frontier Court had accepted it. The hearing was consolidated with the Ashford individual challenge, second week of December. He had 5 channels moving. 2 in active legal process. 2 in financial readiness, Torren's credit, available at instruction. 1 in intelligence preparation, the Crestfall file, timed for journalist submission. 1 in classification process, the assay office petition, timing uncertain. And the 7th step, the succession framing in reserve. He tallied the resources deployed, the 6 months of Carrion's intelligence reports, the 3 years of Crestfall file construction, the 3 years of trust built with Torren and the neighboring baronies. The 12-year-old decision to read the Frontier Charter Appendix carefully. He wrote in the unenciphered section of the second notebook on the last day of November, "Everything I built in the first 8 years is either in use right now or standing by." That was the point of building it. He closed the notebook and went to dinner, where Renner was explaining to Lorne why the third-year assessment waiting for the practical component was structurally biased toward Aura track students in a way that had compounding effects on general track promotion rates. And Kael ate soup and contributed 2 data points to the argument and was genuinely glad that this table existed and that he was at it. The 5 channels were moving. He would know what they had produced in 3 weeks. The Royal Assay Office's response arrived in the first week of December. He had estimated 3 to 5 weeks for processing. The response came in 18 days, which told him 2 things. The application had been reviewed by someone with the authority to make a classification decision quickly, and the strategic interest framing had been effective enough to move the petition up the review queue. He opened the letter at the correspondence desk in the main hall, in the morning traffic, with the same practiced absence of visible reaction he used for all correspondence at this location. Petition number 4471, AR, submitted by Baron Aldrich Ashford, registered holder of Mineral Survey Filing 2, E339, Ashford Eastern Deposit, Kingdom Mineral Registry, the Royal Assay Office of Valdris Kingdom. Having reviewed the above petition and the supporting technical survey documentation dated October year 10, does hereby certify the following. He read the operative paragraph. The deposit had been classified as a strategic mineral resource under the Kingdom's Frontier Military Preparedness Provisions, the the same classification criterion he had structured the statement of public strategic interest around. The classification was permanent and irrevocable without a royal council review process. Any transfer of ownership, voluntary or forced, required prior approval from the Crown's Mineral Administration, which operated on a review timeline of 90 to 120 days from application. 90 to 120 days. The Duke's forced sale instrument operated on a 60-day timeline. A forced sale now required approval that couldn't be obtained in the instrument's operative window. The Duke could still pursue the loan instrument, could still apply for and eventually receive the forced sale approval, but he could not complete the sale in 60 days. The classification had effectively converted the 60-day instrument into an administrative process that would require at minimum 90 additional days after the loan deadline, during which the barony would have time to address the loan debt through other channels. He folded the letter and put it in the cipher box at the correspondence desk. He returned to his study Kael. He wrote in the cipher notebook, Assay Office Classification Granted, First Week December. Strategic Resource, Frontier Military Preparedness. Ownership transfer requires Crown Mineral Administration approval, 90 to 120-day review. Forced sale instrument cannot complete in 60-day window. Channel 4, effective. He sat for a moment with the confirmation. The classification had required 2 years of preparation, not for this specific situation, but for any situation in which the mine's value needed institutional protection. He had registered the deposit in year 8 because registration was the first layer. He had known that the second layer was classification, and that classification required a demonstrated strategic interest. And that demonstrating a strategic interest required having already done the work of surveying and documenting the deposit's actual value. Bast's work over the past 2 years, the autumn surveys, the yield projections, the documentation that came from treating the barony's assets as assets worth knowing precisely, was what had made the technical survey possible. The technical survey was what had made the classification petition viable. The petition was what had produced the classification. He was not, he noted, the kind of person who felt satisfaction at things working as intended. Satisfaction required the expectation that they might not have. He had understood that this channel would work if the application was well constructed and the review queue moved in time, and he had constructed the application to be well constructed, and it had worked. This was the appropriate result. He filed it as such. What the classification did not do, resolve the loan debt. The Duke could not force a sale in 60 days, but the loan remained outstanding and the Duke could still apply to the Mineral Administration for the forced sale approval while simultaneously pursuing other pressure instruments against the barony. Administrative oversight delays, permit denials, the accumulated weight of a duchy's bureaucratic authority applied systematically to make the barony's operation increasingly difficult. The classification bought time. It did not resolve the underlying situation. The resolution required the remaining channels. He updated his analysis of the Duke's likely response to the classification news, which the Duke would receive from the Assay Office's public notification within the week. The Duke had 2 options: proceed with the loan instrument in the knowledge that any forced sale would now require a longer approval process, using that longer timeline as continued pressure. Or redirect his administrative resources to other channels that didn't require the Mineral Administration's cooperation. The other channels available to the Duke: administrative interference with the barony's operational permits, tax oversight audits. The accumulated friction of ducal authority applied to every transaction the barony needed to conduct within the new duchy's territory. These were slower than the loan instrument, but potentially more comprehensive. If the Duke redirected to these channels, Kael's current operation would have neutralized the primary instrument while creating space for a secondary campaign that was harder to counter legally. He added this analysis to the cipher notebook and considered whether the remaining channels, the legal hearing, the compact, the journalist submission, the credit instrument, needed adjustment for the secondary campaign scenario. They didn't, he determined. The legal hearing addressed the loan instrument's jurisdiction basis regardless of whether the forced sale was immediately viable. A favorable determination would invalidate the instrument entirely, which removed the Duke's leverage position. The compact added political weight to the legal challenge and created a coalition that was harder to pressure individually than any single barony. The journalist's submission would produce public attention to the Duke's conduct at the moment the legal case was under review, which complicated the Duke's political position regardless of the loan's specific status. The credit instrument remained in reserve. The classification was one part of a system that was designed to work as a system. Each channel did something that the others couldn't, and the combination of all of them running simultaneously produced a situation in which the Duke had to address multiple problems at once with divided attention. He had built the system deliberately. He had built it in the knowledge that he was a frontier barony's heir with no formal political standing, no military force, no personal noble house weight. Only the resources he had built over 8 years through the specific kind of work that produced networks and intelligence and leverage rather than direct power. A direct power contest with a Duke was not winnable. An indirect contest, legal, financial, political, intelligence, was winnable if the indirect resources were sufficient. He assessed his indirect resources as sufficient. He had now received confirmation that the most time-sensitive channel had worked within its required window. He wrote to Aldrich that afternoon, a brief letter, noting the classification and its implications, explaining what it meant for the forced sale timeline, and noting that the remaining channels were proceeding. He included a sentence at the bottom, "The Eastern land is not going to be sold." He did not include the word yet because he meant it without qualification. He intended the situation to resolve before any qualifier became relevant. He sealed the letter and placed it in the outgoing correspondence. Then he went to the afternoon practicum, which covered advanced theoretical frameworks for aura field interaction in multi-practitioner scenarios and contributed to the discussion at the level of accurate but not remarkable. The classification was effective. The legal hearing was in 1 week. The channels were moving. He had 33 days until the 3 of January deadline. The hearing was on a Tuesday in the second week of December in the Frontier Court's administrative chamber in the regional seat town of Carvel, a 3-day ride from the academy, which Kael could not take without abandoning his cover at a critical moment. And so did not. He received the result by express correspondence on the Friday following the hearing, which meant he had spent 3 days with the hearing in progress and nothing to do about it except continue his other work. He had continued his other work. The result? Partial. The Frontier Court had determined that the Frontier Barony Treaty Provisions Appendix of Section 7, Clause 12 applied to 2 of the 4 loan instruments the Duke's agent had called in. The 2 that had been issued before the Crestfall family held any administrative authority in the Frontier territory. The determination did not apply to the 2 instruments issued under a more recent credit facility, which had been established after the Crestfall family's Western Plains administrative presence had made the regional jurisdictional question ambiguous. 2 of 4. The outstanding debt under the 2 remaining instruments was approximately 55 of the total sum the Duke had called in. This was not complete victory. It was also not a defeat. 55% of a sum was a sum he could address through Torrens' credit instrument, expensive, but executable. The legal challenge had reduced the problem to a manageable scale. What the legal challenge had also done, which was its secondary function, it had established, in a court record, that the Duke's application of ducal authority to pre-existing frontier barony loan instruments was legally contestable. The determination would stand as precedent for the Compact's challenge and for any similar challenge any other frontier barony might bring. He wrote to Torren, authorized the credit instrument for 55 of the original sum, with the collateral and terms as proposed. He received confirmation within the week. The credit was arranged. The 2 instruments under ducal jurisdiction were now addressable with capital Torren had extended on the agreed terms, collateral established against the deposit's registry value. The legal challenge was complete. The classification was in place. The credit was arranged. The deadline was 17 days away. He confirmed to Aldrich, the remaining instruments will be addressed through the credit facility. On January 3rd, you will have the payment. Do not sell anything. He added the Frontier Court determination as a formal attachment for Aldrich's records. He then turned to what the hearing had also produced, which was the Eastern Frontier Compact's standing in the court record. The compact had been formalized through the hearing. 3 baronies presenting a unified challenge, recognized by the Frontier Court as a legitimate coordinating instrument under the Merchant Guild's facilitation framework. The recognition mattered not because it changed the legal challenge's outcome, that was resolved on its merits, but because it established the compact as a named entity with court standing, which meant it could file future challenges, present unified testimony in subsequent proceedings, and be named as a collective party in correspondence and negotiation. He had not only solved the immediate problem, he had built the instrument that would address the next problem when the Duke's attention returned to the frontier, which it would. The Eastern Frontier Compact, in its public form, was Torrhen's initiative and the 3 baronies' participation. Torrhen had presented it as a merchant guild coordination structure supporting frontier development and trade stability, accurate framing that contained the full truth without revealing the full truth. 3 frontier barons had signed the coordination agreement and had attended the hearing through their local legal representatives. Guildmaster Torrhen had provided the facilitation documentation and had appeared in person, which was unusual for a guild facilitation role, and which the court had noted in its record as demonstrating the commercial significance of the arrangement. Kael had not appeared in person. His role was not in the court record. He received Torrhen's debrief letter from the hearing written in the standard commercial cipher, 2 layers, with the operational detail in the compressed inner layer, on the day he received the formal determination. Torrhen's assessment of the hearing. The Frontier Court judge had been skeptical of the provision's appendix argument initially, and had required 2 hours of examination before the determination. The 2 instruments excluded from the determination had been excluded on narrower grounds than Kael had anticipated, suggesting the judge was trying to find a middle position rather than rule fully against ducal authority. The compact's participation had added visible weight to the challenge. At the bottom of Torrhen's letter, in his characteristic voice, Duke Crestfall's legal representative was a good lawyer. Better than I expected for a frontier land matter. The Duke knows this is not over. He noted this and agreed. The Duke had sent a good lawyer. The good lawyer had limited the ruling's scope. The Duke was not someone who had deployed the instrument and then walked away. He had prepared for a legal contest and had been partially successful in limiting the contest's outcome. He was a capable operator. This was important information. The Duke was not making mistakes from lack of preparation. He was operating with adequate resources and adequate intelligence. The Frontier Court determination had cost him 2 instruments, but not the other 2. He would assess the situation, understand what had happened, and determine his next step. His next step, Kael assessed, would not be another legal instrument. The legal path had produced a partial result and had established precedent that worked against him. The classification had made the forced sale path require a longer approval timeline. The compact had created a coalition he would have to fight 3 times instead of once for future legal actions. The legal and institutional channels were now significantly more expensive for the Duke than they had been a month ago. That left the direct approaches. He sat with this in the study Kael on the Friday he received the hearing result, after completing the Torrhen correspondence and drafting the Aldrich letter. The direct approaches available to a Duke who had determined that institutional channels were too slow or too exposed, administrative pressure, permits, audits, the accumulated bureaucratic friction of ducal authority, political pressure, Crown Prince faction relationships applied to the barony's external dependencies, and physical. He had been thinking about physical since the day he received his father's letter. He had not included it in the 7-step plan because a plan that assumed the opponent would send people was a plan that assumed the opponent had concluded the institutional approach had failed. The institutional approach had not yet failed from the Duke's perspective. It had produced a partial result and created more obstacles than anticipated. The Duke needed to assess. How long did the assessment take? He modeled the Duke's decision process, 2 to 4 weeks from the hearing result. The hearing result would arrive at the duchy's administrative seat approximately 5 to 7 days after the ruling. Kael had received it in 3 days. The Duke, in the Western Plains, would receive it in a similar time frame. Assessment: 2 weeks from receipt if the Duke was careful. 1 week if he was impatient. 3 weeks from the hearing ruling to a decision about next steps. Maybe less. He noted the timeline and filed it. Then he submitted the Crestfall journalist package to Torrens Document Services contact. The submission Torren would route to the Capital broadsheet's senior correspondent. Submission to the journalist now. Expected verification period 2 to 3 weeks. Expected publication, the 2nd week of January. When the Duke's legal team would still be managing the court determination's paperwork, and when the compound's precedent would be visible in the legal record. The 6 channels remaining active work: credit instrument executing, Torren, journalist submission processing, assay office classification in effect. 3 outcomes secured. 3 weeks until deadline. The Eastern land was not going to be sold. He was done with the reactive phase. What came next depended on what the Duke decided. The broadsheet ran the story on the 14th of January, which was 11 days after the 3 of January loan deadline had passed. The deadline had passed cleanly. Torren's credit instrument had executed on the 2nd of January, 1 day early, which was Torren's approach to any deadline that mattered, and the 2 instruments under ducal jurisdiction had been settled. The Frontier Court's determination had already resolved the other 2. The Duke had received full payment on both outstanding instruments by the morning of the 3rd. The legal and financial channels were closed. The loan was paid. The Eastern land was not sold. He had written to Aldrich on the evening of the 2nd, paid. The Barony is clear. Aldrich had written back in the fastest return letter Kael had received in 3 years of their correspondence. I know. Fast confirmed. Thank you. And then, below that, in different handwriting, slightly larger letters, less careful, the way his father wrote when he was not thinking about the writing. Gareth says you did this. He says he doesn't know how. I told him that's the point. He read this twice, and then filed it where he filed things that were not operational, but were real. The loan was paid. The broadsheet story ran 11 days later. He had submitted the package through Torrens Document Services contact on the Friday after the hearing result. The package was a clean document set. The House Aldwych survey discrepancy, the comparative analysis between the 2 archival copies, the subsequent administrative filing pattern, and 3 external references to the Crestfall family's Western Plains holdings that provided context for the discrepancy pattern without requiring access to his internal intelligence files. Everything in the package was either publicly available or archivally accessible to a journalist with the standard credentials for Capital Record Room access. The journalist, whose name did not appear in any of Kael's correspondence, Torrens Document Services contact had handled the introduction and all subsequent communication, had spent the 2-week verification period doing what the broadsheet's standard policy required, independent confirmation of the survey discrepancy through the Capital's registry records, verification that the 2 archival copies differed in the specific way the package described, and review of the subsequent administrative filings for consistency with the pattern. He knew the journalist had completed this verification because the story ran. A story that was published was a story where the journalist had satisfied the verification standard. He had submitted the package with the confidence that the verification would succeed because the discrepancy existed in the archival records and any journalist with registry access could confirm it in a single afternoon. The broadsheet was the Capital Administrative Review, not the most widely read publication in Valdres City, but the one read by the specific audience that mattered: the Noble Council's administrative staff, the Crown's ministry officials, the merchant houses whose operations touched the nobility's land and tax systems. The review covered administrative and commercial matters with a rigor that the higher circulation social broadsheets didn't match. Its readership was the class of people who would understand the survey discrepancies' implications without requiring extensive explanation. The story was, by the review's standards, a significant piece, front section, long form, with documentation reproduced in the summary appendix. The headline used administrative language: discrepancy in Duchy Crestfall land registration filings prompts registry review inquiry, which was accurate and would not strike the general reader as alarming. The specific audience would understand what registry review inquiry implied for a duke who had spent political capital on his frontier elevation. The timing: the story ran while the Duke's legal team was still completing the paperwork on the Frontier Court's determination from December. The Duke's attention was already divided between the loan resolution and the legal challenge's precedent implications. The story added a third matter requiring his administrative attention at the moment his resources were most stretched. He received a copy of the review's 14th of January issue through Torrens courier service. Torren had anticipated the request and sent the issue without waiting to be asked, which was the kind of operational anticipation that made Torren's network valuable. He read the story in full. The journalist had been accurate and had been careful. The piece did not overstate what the discrepancy demonstrated and did not make claims that the verification couldn't support. It stated facts and described their implications clearly. This was exactly the correct approach. A story that overstated would be challenged on the overstatement. A story that stated precisely what the facts supported was much harder to refute. The Duke's response to the story: Kael did not have direct intelligence on this. He had inference. A Duke with adequate political resources would have 4 options: deny, which required refuting the archival discrepancy, which was not refutable since both copies existed in the registry; explain, which required a plausible innocent explanation for the discrepancy, which would be difficult given the pattern; ignore, which produced the impression of being unable to respond, which was damaging in the political environment of a succession crisis where the Duke's standing depended on Crown Prince faction loyalty; or redirect, attack the source of the story as a competitive or political move, which required identifying the source, which was protected behind Torrens document services anonymization. He assessed the redirect option as most likely. The Duke's intelligence was good enough to identify that the Ashford Barony's counter to the loan instrument had been unusually sophisticated for a minor frontier baron. The story's submission source was anonymized, but the timing, 2 weeks after the frontier court hearing, was a pattern that a careful analyst could connect to the hearing's participants. He had anticipated this. The anonymization through Torrens document services contact was designed to be durable. Not because it was impenetrable, but because tracing through it required specific knowledge of Torrens' internal operation structure that was not available from outside. The connection between the story source and the Ashford Barony's legal challenge was inferable, but not provable through the external record. The Duke would infer. He might infer correctly. He would not be able to prove it. He wrote in the cipher notebook, "Story published January 14th. Correct target, correct timing, correct framing. No provable source connection. Duke will infer, cannot prove. Attribution will be directed at Ashford generally, based on pattern of counter-operation. Expected next move, direct action, not institutional. Assessment. The institutional approach has been closed from the Duke's perspective. Estimated timeline to next move, 2 to 4 weeks. 2 to 4 weeks. He updated his assessment of the Duke's position. A man who had deployed a well-resourced institutional campaign against a minor frontier barony and had received, in return, a partially successful legal challenge. A classification that blocked his primary instrument's outcome, a credit deployment that cleared the debt before he could act on the legal position, and a public story questioning his administrative record. The debt was paid. He could not proceed with the loan instrument. He could begin the mineral administration approval process for the forced sale, but that process would now run 4 to 6 months, during which the story's implications for his standing would continue to develop. The Duke was not a man who had miscalculated the situation. He was a man who had calculated correctly and found that the situation was better defended than he had been told to expect. His intelligence about the Ashford Barony had been, as the Demon Scout had said about the Ashford frontier, inaccurate. Inaccurate intelligence about an opponent produced predictable outcomes. You deployed the resources appropriate to what you thought you were facing and found yourself facing something different. The Duke had deployed a sophisticated institutional campaign, which was appropriate for a contested, but straightforward frontier barony. He had found something that contested back with comparable sophistication. He would adjust. The adjustment was what Kael was now waiting for. He attended the third-year seminars and wrote his correspondence and ran the pre-dawn sessions and sat with Renner and Sova and Lorne and Cass at dinner and tracked the Academy's political pattern through the first weeks of January with the same careful attention he had maintained for 2.5 years. He was also, in the specific way of someone who had been in difficult situations before, maintaining his physical readiness at a higher level than the pre-dawn sessions alone would produce. He added an evening session 3 times weekly, not in the main arena, where it would be visible, but in a building maintenance corridor between the residential tower and the eastern academic wing that had no monitoring presence and sufficient length for the drills he was running. He was not panicking. He was not afraid. Specifically, he was alert in the way that he was always alert when a situation was moving toward an outcome he had not yet seen. He was 16. He was at the academy. He was watching the doors. He learned that the men had been sent on a Thursday. He learned it not through his own intelligence network. He didn't have assets covering Duchy Crestfall's internal operations directly. And the Duke's decision to send rather than file would have been made and executed before any surface signal appeared in Carrion's commercial tracking or Torrhen's trade correspondence. He learned it through a different channel, which was Torrhen himself, who had received a visit at his merchant ring shop in the capital on the Tuesday of the previous week. The visit, per Torrhen's letter, 2 men, not giving names, asking questions about the document services contracts that had routed certain archive research materials over the past 2 months. Torrhen's shop handled legitimate archive research request routing for dozens of clients. The questions had been framed as a business inquiry, politely, in the way that politely framed questions are when the people asking them are not primarily interested in the business. Torrhen had answered the questions at the level appropriate for a straightforward business inquiry, and had charged them a consultation fee at the standard document research rate, which was his characteristic approach to situations where the correct move was to be entirely normal. He had written to Kael 2 days after the visit, 2 visitors asking about document routing. Neither asked about you specifically. Didn't need to. If they know which routing chain to ask about, they already know what they want to confirm. I told them what I would tell any business client asking about our routing procedures. This is, I think, the signal you are watching for. I will note that I have done nothing improper and my business records will reflect this if anyone examines them. Be careful. Be careful. He read this in the correspondence room on a Thursday morning and noted, with the specific precision he maintained about what his body was doing, that his hands were steady and his breath was even and the quality of his attention had not changed. He noted that this was a good sign. He folded the letter and put it in the cipher box. The men had been sent. He did not know when exactly. He did not know their caliber. He knew that the Duke had made a decision. The institutional channels had been inadequate. The direct approach was now the approach, and had acted on it in the time since the broadsheet story. The 2 men visiting Torrhen on Tuesday confirmed the Duke's intelligence operation had identified the routing chain. If they had the routing chain, they had traced the story to Torrhen. If they had traced the story to Torrhen, they had probably traced enough of the counter-operations shape to identify the barony as its origin. Not Kael specifically. A minor frontier barony. A 16-year-old student at the academy, whose official profile was General Track Scholarship, Fractured Aura Corps, one notable tournament run 3 years ago. The profile did not suggest the kind of operation the Duke had encountered. But the barony was the connecting thread. If the Duke had intelligent people, and the lawyer at the Frontier Court hearing suggested he did, they had by now concluded that whatever intelligence and network infrastructure had defended the barony was either not coming from the barony itself or was coming from the barony's heir at the academy. He was the logical conclusion of the Duke's analysis. He updated his physical security assessment. His room, residential tower, 3rd floor, eastern wing. Single window, 2 floor drop to the courtyard. 1 door. Standard room lock. Adequate for academy residential norms, not adequate against professionals. He had been conducting the evening sessions in the maintenance corridor rather than the main arena. He had been noting the courtyard lamp placement for 3 years. He had been tracking the building's access patterns since the first week of first year. He had 2 advantages: the academy's resident population and the suppression technique. The residential population meant that unsanctioned violence on academy grounds was not straightforward. The academy's internal security force, while not a military unit, was a presence that needed to be avoided. Professionals working in this environment would need to operate quietly at a time when the residential population was inactive and would need to access a specific room. The suppression technique meant that his aura signature, to any standard reading, was the sub-initiate fractured core, not a target that 2 gold aura professionals would expect to require serious work. The suppression was both a risk and an advantage. A risk, they might hit the room when he wasn't in it, at which point his absence would tell them he had intelligence he shouldn't have had. An advantage, they would not be prepared for what they were actually facing. He did not change his visible routine. He maintained his study Kael hours, his dining hall attendance, his seminar participation. He maintained the pre-dawn sessions. He stopped the evening maintenance corridor sessions, 2 exposed at night in a building access corridor, and resumed them in the pre-dawn window, which he could control more precisely. He added one thing to his void echo rotation, a water defensive shield technique he had recorded 3 weeks earlier from a second-year water track student in the general practice annex. He had been cycling his 8-type rotation for study purposes. He cleared 2 older types, the wind acceleration technique and a fire basic he had maintained since the first testing week, and loaded in 2 new types he assessed as more operationally relevant. Current rotation, Lyra's lightning strike, basic, earth ground compression strike, dark concealment shell, water defensive shield, fire, advanced pattern from 3rd-year student, a light flash burst from the restricted training session he had attended in November, and 2 wind techniques, a directional gust and a rapid vertical displacement maneuver he had been studying for 2 months. 8 types, full capacity. He was not building a combat strategy. He was not planning to fight his way out of the room. He was loading what he had and thinking carefully about what he might need, because the preparation took 10 seconds per type, and the cost of the preparation was trivially small, and the cost of not having it was potentially not trivially small. He went to bed at normal hours. He slept in the specific way he had learned to sleep in environments where sleeping was what was required fully, without the surface alertness that would have degraded the rest. He slept and woke and attended his seminars and ate dinner, and returned to the residential tower on the evenings following the Thursday letter. He had no way to know when. He had a way to calculate the probability range. The Duke's team would not move immediately after the Torin visit, because they would want to confirm before acting. The confirmation process would take some days. They would not move during the week's normal hours, because the Academy's population density in daylight made quiet operation significantly harder. They would move at night, which narrowed the window to the hours between the residential floor's lights out and the pre-dawn security rotation change. He estimated 1 to 2 weeks from the Torin visit on a night in that window. He continued his schedule. He was not afraid. He was attending to the situation with full accuracy, which produced a kind of concentrated calm that was not the calm of not noticing, but the calm of having noticed everything and decided that the correct response to everything was to be prepared and to sleep well and to attend the seminars and to wait. On the Tuesday of the 2nd week after the Torin letter, he was in the library at the late hour, running a restricted section cross-reference he had been planning since November. The cross-reference was legitimate and relevant and had been delayed because the restricted section's November and December hours had been occupied with other work. It was the kind of legitimate work he would have been doing that evening regardless of the current situation. He left the library at the 11th hour, slightly later than usual, because the cross-reference had produced 2 additional references he had not anticipated, and he had stayed to note them. He crossed the courtyard. He climbed the residential tower's east staircase. He turned toward his room on the 3rd floor. He stopped. His spatial sense, running at passive level, registered 2 aura signatures in his room that he had not put there. Silver plus. Both of them. Reading the signatures from 20 feet down a corridor, through a closed door, with his suppression fully active, 2 practitioners at close range, not moving, in the specific quality of stillness that people maintained when they were waiting for something to arrive. He stood in the corridor for what was probably 3 seconds, but felt longer, and understood the situation with the full precision of someone who had been preparing to understand it for 2 weeks. 2 gold aura professionals. In his room. Waiting. He had 3 seconds before the sound of his footsteps stopping would tell them that he had also stopped. 3 seconds. He used the first second to understand what he knew. 2 signatures. Gold aura. both the specific quality of a field that extended slightly beyond the body's surface, that altered the ambient temperature of the air immediately around it, that registered in his spatial sense not as a location, but as a distortion. He had observed gold-class aura at the Academy tournament 2 years ago, when Seraphine had used Voss Radiance 3 times and the main arena had contracted around the deployment. He had observed it in the Demon Scout at the Frontier, at the top-end bronze to lower gold range. He had understood the theory of it since the power system reading of his first life. 2 professionals in his room, not moving. The stillness of people who had been in position for some time and were comfortable holding the weight. He used the second to assess his resources. Void Echo Rotation, 8 types. Lightning, Earth, Dark Concealment, Water Shield, Fire Advanced, Light Flash Burst, 2 Wind Techniques. He had Silver Aura, Suppressed, a core that read as fractured and minimal to anyone using standard assessment. He had Spatial Displacement, moving by adjusting his relationship to space itself, the technique he had used in the tournament match against Seraphine, the one that required full space magic activation and was not subtle. He had a corridor. He had the building's layout in exact spatial memory. He had 3 seconds before the sound quality of his footsteps stopping communicated information. He used the 3rd second to decide. He did not go forward. He went backward, a single step, then a spatial displacement 3 meters down the corridor toward the stairwell. Silent in the sense that spatial displacement did not produce footstep sound, but not silent in the sense that a gold aura practitioner with spatial awareness at their rank standard would register the distortion in the ambient field. He heard the door open as he landed. He ran. Not toward the stairwell he had come from. They would expect the stairwell, which was the obvious exit and the path that produced the longest exposure in a corridor with no cover. He ran toward the service corridor junction at the east end of the 3rd floor, which he had mapped in the first week of the first year, and which connected to the building maintenance passage that ran between the residential tower and the lecture wing's eastern face. He heard them behind him. Gold aura. Faster than he was. He released the dark concealment shell into the corridor between himself and the sound of their movement. Not a specific concealment spell, but the Void Echo's replay of the shell technique, which he released without stopping, which produced a zone of visual and spatial interference in the corridor's middle section. He had 65 of the original caster's output. The original caster had been a 2nd-year student running practice drills. He didn't need it to be impressive. He needed it to take 4 seconds. He reached the service junction. The door was not locked. The maintenance staff used it during cleaning hours, and the lock had been unreliable since September, which he had noted in September and not reported. He went through. The maintenance passage was dark and ran approximately 40 meters toward the lecture wing. He went 8 meters in, turned, and listened. They were good. He heard them take the corridor junction door in less than the 4 seconds he had hoped for 3.5, which told him the concealment shell's replica had been at the low end of its operational quality. Possibly because the spatial interference from gold aura at close range degraded the Void Echo's output precision. He filed this as important technical information for another time. He ran the length of the passage. The passage ended at the lecture wing's east service exit. The exit opened onto a maintenance stairwell. He went down 2 floors and hit the ground-level door. They came through the passage behind him. He was faster in the stairwell than in the open corridor. The dimensions of the stairwell favored someone who could anticipate geometry over someone with superior raw speed. He used the spatial sense to read 3 steps ahead and took the stairs in a pattern that a pursuer without that information couldn't predict. He hit the ground floor, through the service exit, into the courtyard's eastern periphery. January. The January cold had the quality of the Academy grounds in deep winter, clear, hard, the courtyard's lamps at their intervals in the dark. He assessed the courtyard in the half-second he had. The main gate was to the west, which was the wrong direction. The library's side entrance was to his left. The noble residential quarters boundary was to his right, the section of grounds where the Aura Track's private study suites were located. which had its own security presence, and which was the one area of academy grounds that professionals executing a quiet operation would not willingly follow into without escalating the situation to a level that attracted attention. He went right. He heard them exit the maintenance stairwell behind him. He was crossing the eastern courtyard in the specific quality of full-speed running that he had been training with Gareth for 8 years, not a sprint, but a sustained pace that he could hold for the length of what was required. Using the spatial sense to read the ground and avoid the patches of frost that the January night had produced on the stone. He was 16. His physical baseline was the highest it had been in this life. He ran. One of them was faster. He felt the hit on his left side before he had fully registered that the gap had closed, not a full strike, a glancing contact from someone who had deployed partial gold aura force at the edge of their reach. The force was sufficient. His left ribs took the impact, and he heard rather than felt the result, which was the sound of something that was not supposed to make that sound. He kept running. The spatial sense confirmed they were falling back. The noble residential quarters boundary lamp array was at the 40-meter mark, and the security presence registered as 2 aura signatures that the professionals behind him had clearly read. Because they stopped. He reached the boundary. He kept going. His left side produced a quality of sensation as he ran that he classified as injury and deferred for later analysis. The noble residential quarters interior paths were lit and had security presence. The professionals were not following him in here. He had made the boundary. He was in the quarter. He slowed to a walk. He assessed, left side, ribs, impact at partial gold force at glancing contact. The glancing quality was what had kept it from being worse. A direct hit from a gold aura practitioner running at full output would have produced outcomes significantly less walkable. He had taken the edge of the strike. 2 ribs, possibly cracked, he would not know without an assessment. And he could not get an assessment from the Academy Infirmary at the 11th hour of the night without someone asking how a fractured cord general track scholarship student had acquired 2 cracked ribs and a gash. He realized he was also bleeding. The impact had carried something, a contact weapon, small blade, or spiked bracer, the kind of thing that professional practitioners sometimes used when they wanted to ensure a physical result even in a glancing hit. The gash was on his left side, below the rib impact. He registered this and categorized it as the more immediately urgent matter. He was in the noble residential quarter. He needed medical attention he couldn't explain at the infirmary. The infirmary was not an option. He stopped walking and stood in the lit path and thought, for a moment, about what was available. The noble residential quarter housed the Aura Track's private study suites. The suites were assigned by standing and year. He knew the layout. He had known it since second year because knowing where significant variables were located in a shared environment was standard practice. Seraphine Vasa's suite was in the north wing. He had noted it in second year. He had never had reason to use the knowledge. He was 30 meters from the north wing, standing in the January cold with his left side bleeding and 2 cracked ribs and no better option on any axis of the available situation. He walked toward the north wing. He had made worse decisions.